Why are there so many stories of people dying after getting the COVID vaccine? Hi, I'm Dr. Pantagani, and welcome to a You Can Know Things video on the post-hoc fallacy. We'll go through where these stories come from and what they mean. If you've spent any amount of time on the internet, you've probably come across stories like these. My neighbor got the COVID vaccine and had a heart attack the very next day. Or, my friend died just 3 days after getting the shot. Or maybe you've heard people talk about VAERS, saying there are thousands of vaccine deaths reported in VAERS, just go look for yourself. VAERS is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's one of the monitoring systems we have in the US where anyone can file a report of any bad health thing that happens after someone gets a vaccine, and doctors are required to report deaths. Currently, there are over 18,000 preliminary reports of deaths after vaccination. So what should we make of these stories? Are they truly signs that the COVID vaccines have been killing thousands of people? What is going on? It turns out you could have literally given everyone a placebo shot instead of the COVID shot, and you would have had the same thing. Not only that, you could have literally given everyone just a bottle of water instead of a COVID vaccine, and you would still have stories like this of death right after that bottle of water. If you give literally anything to a large chunk of the population, there will be instances of death shortly after that thing. This sounds weird. Why does this happen? To answer that question, let's look at this hypothetical scenario. In this graph, the arrow is time, and each green dot represents some bad health thing, say a heart attack or a stroke. These are happening in the background over time if you look at a large population. Now, let's say all of a sudden a whole bunch of people get a vaccine in a short period of time, say because there's a global pandemic going on. Those background health events are still going on. Some people will have that background health event well before getting a vaccine, so nobody thinks there's any connection. Some might have it way after getting the vaccine. Some people get vaccinated, won't have that bad health event. Some people will have the bad health event, but won't get vaccinated. But a few people will get the vaccine and then have the bad health event shortly after. These are the stories that end up getting reported to VAERS. When you don't see those background rates, and the only information you have is the story of, I got the vaccine, and 3 days later, this terrible health thing happened, it's very easy to commit what's called the post-hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy, or post-hoc for short. This translates from Latin as after this, therefore because of this. It's a type of logical fallacy. Logical fallacies are errors in reasoning that seem right on the surface, but are often oversimplifications. In this case, it's an oversimplification because one event occurring before another is not sufficient evidence to say that the first event caused the second. In fact, when a large proportion of a population gets vaccinated, it is a statistical guarantee that there will be reports of negative health events after vaccination, even when the vaccine has zero side effects. Don't believe me? Let's do some math. There are roughly 330 million people in the United States, and roughly 2.8 million die every year in a non-pandemic year. That comes to 7,600 deaths per day. Let's do a math problem. Let's say 50% of the population gets a vaccine or a placebo or just a bottle of water. Let's arbitrarily say on January 1st, how many deaths would occur within 1 week? So that's 7 days, and there's 7,600 deaths per day just happening in the background, and then half of those people are vaccinated that week. That comes to 26,600 deaths within 1 week of vaccination that are purely due to chance, purely due to the background rate of death in the United States. So deaths after vaccination are expected when the vaccine is given to a whole bunch of people, even when the vaccine is not causing death. However, sometimes vaccines do have true rare side effects. So how do we tell the difference? How do we tell when there are real side effects? The answer is you have to compare to the background rates of that event. So to see this, let's go back to our hypothetical example. Here's the one you saw before, which has no connection to the vaccine. It's just happening in the background at its normal rates. Now let's look at a second bad health thing number 2 in gold. You can see that there's a cluster of 4 events that occurs very close to the time of vaccination versus everywhere else it's pretty sparse. It's hardly occurring at all. This is the type of signal that scientists look for to tell true side effects from background events in the population. And when we can see those background levels, it becomes clear. there's clustering of gold dots around the time of vaccination, but not green ones. However, when we just look at the stories and don't compare to those background rates, we can't tell the difference. So what have we learned? To interpret deaths after vaccination, you have to compare to the baseline rate of that same cause of death in the population. You can't determine cause and effect from stories in isolation. By themselves, they are uninterpretable. So let's look at this one more way. What would it take for a vaccine to have no deaths after it? No reports in VAERS, absolutely zero reports of anyone dying after the vaccine. So in this case, a red dot is death from any cause. In order for the vaccine to have no deaths after it, all deaths would just have to stop. No heart attacks, no strokes, no pneumonia, no nothing. To have a vaccine with no deaths after it, the vaccine would have to not only be safe, but it would have to actually prevent all death from every single cause. And that's not something vaccines can do. They protect against one specific disease, but they cannot stop all death. That's all, and thanks for watching. You can find me at youcanknowthings.com or on Twitter at @CamPanthagani or on Instagram at YouCanKnowThings.